Welcome back to year and a half long hiatus we've been taking here at the More Sports Please podcast. We're back. Things are a little different right now. We're having technical difficulties with webcams, so we're just doing an audio today. Um, we don't know how this is kind of spur of the moment, sporadic that we're doing right now. We're not sure how many of these we'll put out weekly or monthly or even yearly, but we are guaranteed another draft podcast. So stick around for that. That'll be April 27th. We're going to do one of those like we do every year. We're going to be coming back. I'll have to, once we'll get some topics today. Once the Super Bowl is over, I'll share some draft notes with the guys. But they are obviously, their teams are a lot better than mine, so they're more concerned about the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Um, but with that, I give you guys introductions. Say hello, Gavin and Offenbacher.
What's up?
Howdy, howdy.
They're back, the usual three. We are here, we are near, and we are far. Um, so there's a couple topics I want to get to tonight. As you know, the Super Bowl is this weekend. It'll be Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. I just want to, before we hit to that Super Bowl topic, I want to touch on the championship games that happened this past weekend. Um, we'll get to the easy one first, the one I don't think that'll take the longest, so we'll get that one out of the way. The Eagles and the 49ers. Gavin, I kind of want your insight and your take about that and what you thought about the game, and I just want to know your point of view and how you feel, and if things would have been different had Brock Purdy not injured his throwing arm, had things been different, or would the score and outcome have been the same?
Well, yeah, for the Brock Purdy question, even when he was in, I feel like Christian McCaffrey was still carrying that offense just the entire game. I don't think I mean, obviously him being not hurt would have definitely helped the 49ers. It may have been a closer game, but I think well, we still put 31 points up on the best defense in the NFL. Granted, they were on the field a lot, but it still it's our team just played really well after that first quarter and a half where we kind of didn't know we couldn't really get anything going offensively. But then we started clicking. 49ers could just not stop getting penalized for stupid stuff. And it's not like it was bad refing. It was just th- they were committing too many penalties. It was just kind of undisciplined on their side, which is surprising from that unit. But yeah, I think the Eagles showed, you know, beat two teams in a row in the playoffs, 31-7. I think those both games. Putting up dominant performances, got a lot of momentum going into the big game.
Before I touch on more of that, of the dominating performances against these subpar teams with the injuries of the quarterbacks, did you just say penalized?
Yeah, penalized, penalized.
You're a funny old man. But I do. I always wonder the question. What if Purdy doesn't get hurt? I don't know if it would have changed the outcome that much. I don't think he's. Oh, hi, Aurora. Sorry, my now fiance. For people that have listened to podcasts before, I don't even know if I had a girlfriend at the time, but I'm now engaged. Just let my cat Aurora in the door because she was
Yeah.
out meowing outside. So, but I always wondered the question if Purdy would haven't had gotten hurt, would the outcome have changed? I don't believe so. I still believe it would have been a blowout. But I mean, now this is my opinion because I got a lot of shit for the 2020 Steelers having an easy schedule. I think the Eagles definitely uh I can't think of the word for it. They definitely, it helped that they had an easy road to the playoffs. And I think this season, coming off Mahomes' ankle injury and everything that's going on in Kansas City, if Philly does win the Super Bowl against Kansas City, I feel like some people are going to remember it as the Philadelphia Eagles Mickey Mouse season.
Um. Well, I mean, we had the best regular season that we have ever had in franchise history. Our offense was putting up record numbers. Our defense was putting up record numbers of sacks for our franchise. I mean, this is the best Eagles team I've seen, no matter who we face. I mean, yeah, we've had some pretty easy games, but like, we can't play, like the Bengals and Bills and Chiefs every week.
The Eagles also can't play themselves. And when you're just the most dominant team in the conference and potentially the most dominant team in the league, I mean, you don't get that level of challenge quite. And I don't think it should be. Memes are going to be made with a Mickey Mouse ring regardless because that's just always going to happen. But like either way you slice it, like going into the NFC Championship, people were talking about, myself included, the Niners were a freaking machine. Like they're on a 12-game win streak. It didn't matter who was in. It seemed like they were going to be really good and had a really good chance with anybody in that system. It didn't really matter who was at quarterback. It was just seemed like they were so well coached and had such a good roster. But I mean, Eagles took a little bit to get going, but eventually they just destroyed them. So I think they made a big statement that day.
Yeah.
I do agree. I do think that any team that had performed as well as the Eagles, if any of the team in the NFC would have came out just like that, I feel like they would it'd be the same, the whole Mickey Mouse thing and being able to, people like, oh, they had an easy schedule. Looking at the records now of the NFC, they're really the only standout team. I mean, aside from the 49ers, who were up and down the beginning of the season, went on that huge run with Brock Purdy. I don't know how much you can kind of contribute to Brock Purdy and let like how much he can take, showing that if he really was if he was just holding the keys to the castle, playing guard, and everybody else around him made things work, if he was just like a spokesperson of a company, he gets all the credit, but everybody else is doing the work behind him, or if he really is that talented. I hadn't
Uh,
watched much 49ers games, but what were you saying?
I mean, Shanahan has proven that he can take any quarterback and put it in his team, and they'll do just fine. Just
Yeah.
an Shanahan system. You also got Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams. I mean, and plus the number one defense in the NFL. You can put anyone back there, and they'll do good.
And I
I
think
don't
that'll
think special. I mean, being Mr. Irrelevant to an NFC Championship playing quarterback is obviously really impressive. From the games I've seen, I wasn't blown away by his performances. I mean, he was sufficient. He did what he had to do, which is, really all you can ask for from a quarterback. But I don't think he really elevated that team. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I don't know. I feel like it's the same. I mean, I'm kind of am comparing him to like Jimmy G. With Jimmy Garoppolo, he was like he did the same thing. He just ran the offense like Shanahan wanted it to be ran, and he really benefited from his surroundings. I think that Shanahanian system just does wonders, man.
I think everybody talks about like the Denver Broncos and those teams just being a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl playoff team. And I think that statement really does come true for the 49ers. I think they are a quarterback away from winning the Super Bowl. Because their roster for QBs is full of just game managers. I mean, aside from Josh Johnson, they have Brock Purdy, who was an excellent game manager, Jimmy Garoppolo, who is an average game manager, and Trey Lance, who we haven't had to see, who we don't have much to go off of the first couple games, and then he got hurt, and even then he wasn't
Right.
doing a whole lot those first couple games. So I think, I mean, obviously they can't get Brady with that whole retirement that just happened today. I mean, he could come out of retirement again. Who knows with Tommy Boy? But I feel like they're just one good top 15 quarterback away from being Super Bowl contenders every year. because
I
that
mean,
the defense is unstoppable. They have Christian McCaffrey. They have the receivers that can do it. The O line that can block. They just need somebody who isn't a game manager and can make those plays.
I honestly, I would not say I disagree with you. I just think I agree on a lesser extent because I think they are already in that tier where they can be perennial Super Bowl contenders. I mean, they've been to the NFC Championship 3 times in the last 4 seasons. And I think if I remember correctly, 2 years ago was they were just so injured they had just basically no shot. But I do agree because like I think they haven't had stellar QB play there, so I think it would help put them over the top as a potential Super Bowl favorite. But I mean, I guess I'm just arguing semantics here. So um, they're a really good team, but yeah, that little extra push could be the difference between um, them being one of those perennial teams that never makes it to hoisting a Lombardi.
it could, yeah, for sure. But the main takeaway from this game is that the Eagles are NFC champions and are going to the Super Bowl. So enough about the 49ers.
And they had an O line who's a rapist.
Oh yeah, no, that was really disappointing to hear today. Um,
Oh yeah, I didn't see the details on that. I just saw the headline. What happened with that? I forgot about that.
so it happened in 2019, I think. And it got reported back then. And they've just been investigating, and I'm not sure, but um, obviously they have enough evidence to like arrest him now and all that stuff.
Mm.
Uh,
It happened in 2019.
I think so. I think
So
so.
he, even with the rape. Wait a minute. Josh Stills, I feel like. Wasn't. Hold on. I'm going to have to look at his page of his
Has he
team.
been an Eagle for his whole career?
He we signed him as an undrafted free agent in 2022.
Okay, so he's a rookie. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so it's just investigating it since 2019, and then he still gets picked up by a professional team.
Yeah, I don't know how much the Eagles knew about that. I I really don't know. This is the first time I've ever hearing of this. Granted, I kind of just when I first saw that headline today, I was like, who? Because he only played a handful of in our depth chart, he's like listed as our direct like backup guard, even though he's only played a handful of snaps in one game this year, and that was against the Cardinals. But he was almost never using um, we really just use our backup tackles when if a guy is down. But yeah, we I don't know. I don't know what the Eagles knew about him before picking him up. I'm hoping that this was like some confidential stuff that they couldn't talk about. I just hope it would really suck if the organization picked him up knowing that he was under investigation. That'd be like a Browns thing to do. But
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
all that matters now is that he's gone and hopefully never gonna play a snap in the NFL again.
He is also from Ohio,
Yeah,
Oh, great.
Sarahsville. Huh.
I feel like I've heard of that. Where's that at?
It is.
I don't know why I ask questions when I have the power of the internet at my fingertips.
It is over towards West Virginia by
Okay.
Parkersburg and Cambridge. It's like
Noble County.
looks like maybe an hour from Zanesville.
Kind
So
of Athens territory.
yeah, it's about 3 hours from us.
Hmm.
Maybe about an hour down from Canton.
I
They
say we stop paying attention to this guy and we
yeah.
move on to something else.
yeah.
But you're right. It's just a whole bad situation. But other than that, like you said, your Eagles is back in the Super Bowl for the second time in the past 8 years.
5 years,
Five
right?
years, I think. I didn't want to say it and that sounds stupid.
I think it's been 5 years because we played the Super Bowl in 2018.
So the
Yeah.
second time in 5 years.
Yeah, we
Yep.
we won the Super Bowl, sucked. And then we're here. Here we are, back again.
It's crazy, man. Out of all the people in our group chat, and I'm not counting James because he's a Jaguars fan. Well, you know what? I'll count James. I have my team, the Steelers. I have the longest AFC conference championship drought in the whole group chat. In conference championship in general.
Yeah,
Tw-
And the
2015 or 16 against the Patriots.
and it's the longest, I think, playoff win drought too, which is weird.
Yeah.
I mean it's the NFL, man. It's hard to stay consistently good, especially for as long as the Steelers did. Um, but like, you know, this league can change on a dime.
I don't want to hear that. We'll be back next year. Super Bowl champs. We'll play the Lions.
Um,
But that leads
Hell yeah.
me on to our next category, or next conference championship game. Bengals Chiefs. This one was, as everybody expected, high thrilling, low scoring, close game, full of high action packed drama throughout the entire game. Um,
Yep.
so I will hand this off to Jacob to get his opinions about this whole game and what he thinks about what the refs and everything and some of the calls, and just to kind
Yeah.
of go over your mind and see what you think.
Yeah. So before I get into anything, I will make it abundantly clear. Um, I am not overly upset about this game because, frankly, in, aside from the ref ball and the drama and all the, you know, crap talk back and forth between Bengals and Chiefs fans and stuff, the Bengals just got beat. Um, I think that was a game that either team could have gone in and won. It was very close, as we saw. And I think those two teams are going to be powerhouses. Obviously, the Chiefs have been a powerhouse for a while, but the Bengals, I think, are also establishing themselves as a powerhouse in the AFC. And they're going to be kind of contending along with a couple other teams for years to come. But Sunday, um, the better team won. Um, I think, frankly, with the way that game was being played, especially the first quarter and a half, the fact that it was even close going into halftime was shocking because we were just being thoroughly thumped. That whole start of the game, it was just Chiefs dominance and just little things here and there. The defense would bend but not break. Um, having them settle for 3 instead of getting 7. Um, those were the little things that kept us at least alive in that game. Excuse me. Um, people have, I think the Bengals generally played well. I think they had some decent second half adjustments, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Generally, they did about everything they could to keep Mahomes as well contained as possible. But that said, he just played out of his freaking mind. I think he just reestablished that even on a hobbled leg, like, yeah, I'm the best player in football right now, and you just are not going to stop me. And he's got potentially the greatest tight end of all time at his side. So, uh, and a great head coach, great roster overall, underrated defense. They came out, they were motivated, they wanted it more. They were, just as good as the Bengals, and they were the better team that day. I think obviously we were having a rough day on the offensive line, but with 3 starters out, it's difficult to they had the game of their lives, each of those players on the week before against Buffalo. But some days you're just going to get beat, and that Buffalo pass rush is a lot better than Buffalo's, especially after losing Von Miller. So, um, and it sucked that we lost like losing Tyler Boyd. I think that was a big mismatch problem that we had because then they kind of had free reign to just double up on T and Jamar, which kind of cut down on our effectability throughout the game. There were some play calling things that didn't make sense. I understood maybe taking a shot late in the game to try to get downfield. I didn't understand being on 2nd and 3 and taking a deep shot, falling incomplete, and then immediately doing that again. Especially with only a few minutes to go and the game tied, a chance to win this thing. And the consistency with the reffing, it was an issue. I was getting really frustrated with what was going on with that. But I mean, unfortunately, you can't. It was bad on both sides to some degree, but it felt like a lot of calls that were called or not called. A lot of stuff went the Chiefs' way, which I still don't know what the heck happened with that phantom 3rd down. That was just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
I was very confused.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And the thing that I think was frustrating with that was a lot of people were talking about, oh well, I think the ref's explanation was they whistled it, but no one could hear it because of the crowd noise. It was 3rd down in Arrowhead with the Chiefs holding the ball. Do you think the crowd is going to be going that insane when their own offense is on the field trying to drown them out? I don't know. It was a whole cluster. I think that was just a perfect encapsulation of how this season has gone. There's just been pretty rough reffing around the NFL for the entire year. And I think that just showed its ugly head in the AFC Championship. And it was also kind of bizarre and surreal to me to see NFL rigged trending on Twitter. And I was usually whenever penalties happen with the Bengals, I mean, I know this is a different team, but I'm still used to the mid 2010s when flags were getting called on us, and it was because we had some dirty players. It was just kind of weird to have people like saying, "Oh, this is rigged," blah blah blah. But yeah, that was one factor of the game. But like I said, I think frankly, the Bengals just didn't make plays when they needed to. Like when Burrow had the ball with 2 minutes to go, game tied, should have gone downfield to score and win. That's what we'd done a couple times before. Didn't happen that time. And frankly, when you go up against the team that's been consistently the best team in football for the past half decade, 4 times in a little over a year, at some point you're probably going to get beat. And that was our time. So, is what it is.
Now, I will add on to this with the referee situation of the second, 3rd down. There was a clip that was sent out going on Twitter of the 3rd down getting ready to happen and a ref running out from around the Bengals secondary waving his arms. I don't know if he was blowing his whistle, but he was waving his arms trying to stop the play. So there is some proof out there showing that the refs were trying to stop that play and trying to get it done. There's just, and I'm not by all means defending the refs on this as much as it may sound, but there's only so much they can do in a live, bam bam play because they can't let the play stand because some players might have seen the ref wave his arms and weren't going full speed at 100%, but they also it's they can't redo it because now that sets up a situation where they already had the play. They knew that one wasn't going to work. They're going to dial up a new one and have the possibility to pick up a 1st down or even score on the drive. hindsight's always 2020. They didn't do anything on that drive anyways. The Bengals ended up stopping them, I think, on the next series of downs after the pass interference call on Eli Apple.
That
But
was Mike Hilton.
oh yeah, that's right. Couldn't have happened to a
Yep.
better corner. I forgot.
Hey.
But it's just it's and the one thing that really aggravates me is people say these refs have not been consistent all year, and they have been. They have been consistently bad all year. they
Yeah.
it's
I,
been the worst year for officiating in my opinion.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I wouldn't necessarily disagree. It's been a rough
you
year
could
with refs.
definitely. This is like one of those years where it just really stands out, throughout the entire season.
Right.
And
For
know,
sure.
as a referees, you're not supposed to stand out. If you're standing out, you're doing something wrong. If you
Yep.
if you remember the officiating from a game, something went horribly wrong that game.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never good to remember the reps in any sort of game. It's just it's definitely stuck out this year on a number of different games, and I feel like it's time for the NFL to sit down. The NFL has got to do a lot. Roger has got to do a lot of self-reflection this offseason when it comes to not just, not even just the reps, when it comes to concussion protocol, when it comes to a bunch of situations. In my opinion, when it comes to the playoff rank or playoff schedule and the playoff teams and how many should be in the playoffs. I don't personally think the first seed should be rewarded with a first round bye. It's
Mm.
I think it should be an 8 seeded playoff team, but they're never going to do that for how bad the 7th seeds have played these past 2 years. I think once a 7th seed starts to roll in and starts to do good, starts to go to the Super Bowl and wins one, I think then it might be put into consideration. But and even with the playoff rankings with the divisions, I get divisions should lock you into playoffs, but I think it should also consist of your record. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, or the Atlanta Falcons, either one of them could have won the South and been into a playoffs and hosted a playoff game. And I don't think that's right because
Well,
all 4 teams were terrible.
well, then divisions don't matter at all. Then
I
if you,
think I think divisions should lock you into a playoff game. I don't think it should lock you into hosting.
I don't think I agree with that. I think winning your division, even if it sucks, you know, it, even if you have a somewhat mediocre record, I feel like winning that division, getting that home field advantage is it makes the divisions important. You want to win your division. If you don't want to play a road game, then win your division. You know, wild card round.
And
Yeah.
I get that, but is the division really that important when all the teams in it are going 7-10?
Well, I
I
think division
mean,
is
for
important.
the most part.
Because
Yeah,
now
you
they
get those
they get to host a
rivalry.
road game to like the Dallas Cowboys that went what 11-5 or 11 and whatever the fucking
12
new
and 5.
12-5. It's just I think a division should lock you. Winning your division should lock you into the playoffs, but I don't think a team like the Buccaneers should host a playoff game. I know there was always that stigma years ago that like when you were a terrible team with a terrible record and you host a playoff game, you always pulled out the victory. But I think there was just something about this Tampa Bay team that really made me change my perspective on this because they just came out and they just did what they did all season and shat the bed. Brady looked like a 40-year-old quarterback this whole season, except for when he played the Panthers and Mike Evans had like 3 fucking touchdowns. And that segues into our next topic of Brady's retirement for the second time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it
Yep.
Third.
really throws the league in I think, a tornado with quarterbacks because Vegas obviously isn't going to get a replacement for Derek Carr now if they trade him or let him, or cut him somehow. Uh, it just with Green Bay, they're probably going to ship Rodgers off somewhere. There's just a lot of teams out. The quarterback with the 49ers, they're not sure what they're going to do. There's just a lot of team hungry quarterback hungry teams that we're all going to try to be in on Brady. And with Brady retiring, where do they go?
Do keep in mind Lamar Jackson may be on the move.
I do believe he will. I don't
I
see
agree.
Baltimore getting a long-term deal. I see them tagging and trading.
I don't think Lamar plays for Baltimore under the tag. I think that he's given them plenty of time to try to get a deal done. He's shown he wants to be in Baltimore, and they're not giving him the money he wants, clearly.
And I think the
Um,
NFL is trying to add fuel to that fire by putting Tyler Huntley in the Pro Bowl.
Well, isn't that fan voted?
I'm not
partially,
sure how the
partially.
backups work with replacements. It's partially the fans partially count, but I do believe the NFL still has some say in it. I'm not sure how the whole backup quarterback or reserved quarterback thing works. I know with the whole defense and like some linebackers, and if one drops, the reserve jumps up to starter. But I'm not sure when so and so jumps to reserved. I'm not really quite sure how that works, but it's. I just think they're trying to add fuel to that fire to get Lamar to move, because now Tyler Huntley had worse quarterback stats than both the two quarterbacks that started in Pittsburgh, Mitch and Kenny. Both of them. Now Kenny, I 100% know. Mitch, I read something, could be fake, could not, but I believe both of them had better stats than Tyler Huntley did all season.
I mean,
Hmm.
probably.
It's just one of those. I think the NFL's trying to add fuel to the fire and get Lamar to walk. And if Lamar does walk, that'd be great. And I'm interested to see where he does go. If he gets, you know, tagged and traded, or if they don't use the tag on him and he does walk. I could see him going to a number of teams. I do think the Jets are out. I don't think he'll be going there. I think the Jets are about to be all in on Aaron Rodgers and trying to bring him to New York with the signing of Daniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. But I pray Lamar leaves the AFC North.
I mean, I agree with that. I think the Bengals have started to perform better against Lamar in the last couple of years, but I will not miss playing him twice a season.
Right.
Well, how's the Ravens salary cap? You guys know?
I believe they're in the top 10.
Oh,
I'm not for sure. I don't know where the salary cap's been lately. Let me see. Oh, keep going. I'm looking it up.
They are eighth.
geez. Okay. I c- I could see just I could see Lamar Jackson coming back to Baltimore.
They have about 28, roughly 28, close to it's close to 29, but it's a little over 28.5 million dollars.
Yeah, cause well that injury that he had wasn't supposed to sideline him that long, right?
Right.
No,
It was only supposed to keep him out a couple weeks, but he stayed away from the team and then didn't even travel with them to the playoff game in Cincinnati. I mean, when's the last time you've heard a quarterback that didn't travel with the team and go to be there to support him even though they were injured? I mean, we're not going to count like injuries like Damar Hamlin got, and hospital suffering injuries where they just don't have the ability to travel with the team. But if a player gets hurt and has the ability to move and do everything he can, they always travel with the team, whether he's sitting in a press box or he's down on the field. He always travels.
Hmm.
I I will say, and take everything I say with a grain of salt, because this is coming off of recollection from stuff going into rumors and discussions going into the wild card game the week of. So this was 2+ weeks ago. I did see some discussion where they were talking about the injury Lamar had, where actually going onto a plane could technically make it worse. And it's about one of the worst things you could do in terms of inflammation of the injury and increasing the time it takes for recovery. But that said, at the same time, with that whole saga that was going on, even if that isn't or wasn't a factor, I still don't think he would have made that trip, because I think that there's just such a rift going on between him and John Harbaugh and Ravens management.
I think you're
Hmm.
right. I
Who
think you,
knows? Maybe they'll be able to make amends with Lamar Jackson. be nice, you know.
Make nice real
Make
quick.
nice. I
Maybe
think he's just unhappy.
Can you blame him?
Yeah, I guess you're right. They haven't done anything to really help him aside from draft Rashad Bateman.
yeah.
I mean, in terms of team construction and just the fact that I think his performance and value to the team has proved that he deserves, a market sized contract. I think a big issue of it is the amount of guaranteed money. If you're Baltimore, I don't know how you don't give it to him,
Hmm.
but apparently they're dead set on not doing it. So I don't blame Lamar.
We'll see, I guess. Fuck.
It'll definitely be interesting.
It will be interesting.
It will be interesting.
You know what else will be interesting? The Super Bowl, and then the two in it's a week from this Sunday. The Eagles and Chiefs. I just want to touch on this. I think we all have the same teams. I think we're all picking the same team to win this game going into it. The Kelsey Bowl, the Andy Reid Bowl, the Super Bowl. Call it what you want. I think this game has a opportunity to be a shootout. I think this game has the opportunity to be one of the best Super Bowls that we've seen in years. I
I
also
mean,
think that the Super Bowl has the opportunity to be a real snooze fest
what
because
makes you?
this Eagles team is just so good. It's find a hole on their roster, and I will come up with a scenario why it's not.
I mean, yeah, that's the whole thing. The Eagles roster is one of the most complete rosters I've seen in a while. Like where
Oh
you
yeah.
can point at every position and be like, yeah, that's a at least a solid starter for that position.
I think their biggest hole they have is the least important position on the roster, and I think it's running back.
Well, I don't know. Well, we have Miles Sanders, who is finished top five in rushing yards. Granted, we ran the ball a lot, but he does have those explosive plays.
Right,
And we
and
got Kenny Gainwell, who has been balling out in the playoffs. He's had multiple touchdowns so far this playoff run.
I
right,
mean, I was gonna say like you have the Eagles kind of doing running back by committee. It's just your committee includes a top 10 running back, an elite rookie, and I mean Boston Scott is a if he's your RB3, you're in pretty damn good shape.
Oh
right.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. Like if your weakest position is a running back who has a top 10 player in it, that should just go to show you how good this Eagles team really is.
yeah,
If you I just if you put Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, I think this team no doubt is the Super Bowl favorite.
yeah. I mean, we on paper the Eagles are the best team. It's just we gotta perform well. Whenever we have lost this season, well, one either Hurts was gone, or two we just shot ourselves in the foot. We never lose by getting out talented, if that makes sense. Like outplayed. We always make preventable mistakes, and as long as we don't do that, I mean, I think we can go toe to toe with any team in the league, and that's shown because now the Eagles are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to be able to have a lot of success against this Chiefs defense. Don't get me wrong, this Chiefs O line is fantastic, or defensive line is fantastic. They were able to get to Burrow last week and get some sacks on a well praised offensive line coming off a win against Buffalo. But that Chiefs secondary is filled with this Justin Reed, a Trent McDuffie who can't stand on his own 2 feet, and Walmart employees.
I mean, you got Brian Cook, who's only a rookie, but he made the play of the game by picking Burrow off when T. Higgins was going for that ball. And again, he's a rookie that's like one of the more underrated players on the team. Also have to shout him out because he's a Bearcat. Uh,
And I think you're right. I will say he did impress me a lot during this, but it's just that Chiefs secondary, and I get Joe Burrow is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now, if not the greatest. It's
Well,
I would
I just
on
think
the greatest part at least.
I just think Jalen Hurts is going to be able to manipulate that Chiefs secondary better than Burrow does. With
well, I
Jalen,
mean, go ahead.
go ahead.
I mean, the Bengals have great weapons. Don't get me wrong, but you're talking like, Jamar Chase, top five easy, top two maybe, wide receiver in the league. Um, but I mean, look at you got like what Hayden Hurst at tight end,
Right.
yeah, and then you also had Boyd was injured, right?
Boyd was hurt, yes.
Yeah, so now you're going up against AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard, Quez Watkins, who is underrated, big speed, small little speedy guy, and then you got Jalen Hurts as a dual threat. And don't get me wrong, Joe Burrow is also he's mobile, but I mean Jalen Hurts is just ridiculous right now with his legs.
And that's what I'm saying. I know Burrow's got the ability to run, but Hurts is on a different level. Burrow can run when he can, but Hurts is a mobile quarterback who can throw. He's what everybody wanted Lamar Jackson to be. It's and the thing with the Chiefs secondary is they were able to shut Jamar Chase down because Tyler Boyd was out. If Tyler Boyd doesn't get hurt, I think that game goes a different way.
I'd agree with that.
With the Eagles receivers having your big top two in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and then having that big Dallas Goddard at tight end, and then you got Quez Watkins, you got an O line that can block you and pass and run. Miles, the running back by committee with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. I just think that Eagles offense is going to be better against the Chiefs defense. They're going to be able to manipulate the corners, whether they're doubling AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. You're going to be able to find somebody in the flats, whether that's Miles Sanders or Dallas Goddard over the middle or Quez Watkins somewhere on the outside. It's I Joe Burrow or not Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is probably I would, as much as I'd hate the Bengals, he's the best receiver in the league, and I'd obviously take him over AJ Brown. But with T. Higgins having to step into that role, I know he's the second receiver on the roster, anyways, but having to get more attention than he usually does because Boyd isn't out there, I don't think Devontae Smith kind of falls into that pressure like Higgins does because I think Devontae Smith is a better all around receiver. He's got better height, he's got better hands than T. Higgins. He's got better speed. I think he doesn't fall into that pressure and is able to take on either the double teams or the shoves at the line of scrimmage. He's going to be able to perform better than T. Higgins, and I think that defense also of Philadelphia is going to be able to put more pressure on Patrick Mahomes than Cincinnati does. Cincinnati has a fantastic defense, don't get me wrong, but this Eagles defense with some of these old guys with the Dominican Sue, Fletcher Cox, with this secondary that is really, really good at locking down receivers, they're going to be able to hold Patrick Mahomes and put a bunch of pressure on him. It's almost like watching the Buccaneers and Chiefs play a couple years ago when they put a shit ton of pressure on Patrick Mahomes, were able to sack him and kind of make Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill non-factors in the game and just blow him out of the water.
Yeah, yeah, and we're talking about all these like skill position players too, and like the defense. But I think the Eagles just win both sides of the trenches too. I mean, yeah, you're talking about how the Chiefs like pass rush and defensive line is super super good. Um, but I mean, Lane Johnson almost single handedly shut down Nick Bosa last game, who and it has also shut down Micah Parsons. This offensive line is the best offensive line in the league, hands down. And then, like you were saying, on the defensive line, we got like Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, who, by the way, was an insane Defensive Player of the Year snub. He definitely deserves to be a finalist for that. Um, like he's been balling out these last few games, and I think this game, even if it may be a shootout, is going to be definitely won in those trenches.
I would 100% agree with that. Um, I think that the like Herbert was saying, I think the in I'm referencing the Bengals Chiefs game because that is what we have to go off of with the Chiefs right now specifically. With the Bengals defense, it's pretty good top to bottom, but their pass rush, I think it's an underrated pass rush, but it's not, you know, to that elite level of uh, the Eagles pass rush. And the secondary for the Bengals has been banged up. I mean, Eli Apple is CB1 right now, so take that with what you will.
Yeah,
um,
that's all that really needs to be said about that secondary and the corners.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got Mike Hilton, but he's on the slot, so
Yeah, he's not much of a cover corner. He's more of that speedy blitzer that can get to the quarterback.
yep. And then like the Bengals on offense, obviously Burrow can slice and dice just about anybody if you give him enough protection. The running game is pretty good, and we've got elite top three receivers. But that depth is kind of the problem. When we lost Tyler Boyd, then they could just double up on, you know, Jamar and T. And then our next guy, I mean, Hayden Hurst, I think, is a pretty good above average, uh, really solid starting tight end. Dallas Goddard's obviously on a different level from him. And, aside from him, your next guy is Trenton Irwin, who I love, but he's not quite to the level of the other guys. And, it is what it is. But the thing with the Bengals was the last 2 weeks in Buffalo, we won both sides of the trenches. That's why we dominated. We were getting to Josh Allen and making him uncomfortable, and Burrow wasn't getting touched. That's why the Bengals won by 3 scores. In Kansas City, the Bengals couldn't get to Patrick Mahomes unless he had the play really drawn out and he still played out of his mind and he was pretty mobile, but he was still kind of on a banged up ankle. Eventually, they were able to get to him. But the Bengals' offensive line was in shambles. So we were losing the battle in the trenches both ways, and we lost. I don't see how the Eagles would necessarily lose that battle, at least just on paper, because they have a superior offensive line and a superior defensive line. And I think they've got the weapons on offense and the secondary to boot. So I just think they're going to win the battle up front, and everything else will run its course from there.
Yeah, Eagles by 90.
I
You
don't
heard
know
it
about
here
that.
first. Eagles by 90 in the Super Bowl. And I do agree. Um, I had a train of thought, but I just fucking opened a Monopoly game. I don't know why. ADHD. I got the Monopoly Cheaters edition. I wanted to look inside it real quick. But I had a train of thought about the Cincinnati Oh, I remember. And I think another issue with Cincinnati against that Kansas City Chiefs game is later in the game when they were down and needed to score, they just completely abandoned the run game. There was some times where they turned and they'd give it to Samaje Perine, and then there was some times late in the game where they'd give it to Joe Mixon. But I feel like if they just would have stuck with it a little bit more, they would have been able to control the game a lot more had they given guys like Mixon and Perine more carries.
I mean, yeah, I think I would agree to some degree with that, but we were also just not able to establish the run game in that game. We were really struggling running the ball in general. So, I mean, both sides kind of were doing that. I think Pacheco was able to get more chunk yards, and I think that's part of why Kansas City had a better time on offense, generally speaking, at least. But up until like late into the fourth quarter, when Joe Burrow had that design QB run for 14 yards, that was the longest run by either team that day.
Yeah,
It was Joe Burrow.
looking at the stats of the game, Burrow led both teams in rushing yards with 30 on 4 carries.
The only one I think that eclipsed it was that final scramble by Mahomes near the end of the game. I don't know the exact yardage on that one, but I think that was definitely more than 14.
Mahomes had 3 carries for 8 rushes, so it also includes his sacks in there, I believe. So it was probably definitely more, but he had been sacked a couple times, from what I remember.
And then one long run.
But it's yeah. Enough about the championship games. Back to the Super Bowl. I think we can get our predictions in. I do believe the Eagles win this. But like I said, I think this game could go one of two ways, and I don't see now with it being Patrick Mahomes, I don't see it being a blowout. But people have said that before, and it's been a blowout. The Buccaneers set him back to reality, and he never really recovered from it. He hasn't been back to the Super Bowl since until this year. He had some flounders in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals last year with a couple bad interceptions. I just don't think he was able to recover from it. So I do think the Eagles win this game and they win it fairly with a score of 34-7.
Jesus.
4-7. That's interesting. You know what? I like that 34 score. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm a bumble up a little bit. I think this is gonna be a game for the history books. They're gonna be teaching about this game 50 years from now in middle school because it had such an influence on America and the world in general. And I'm going 50-43.
Whew.
Jesus Christ.
Give it to me. I want it. I need it. I'm manifesting it into existence.
Offenbacher.
Go ahead.
5-4 Eagles.
5.
5-4. Frank
If we're
Clark gets
doing
two
spicy
safeties.
takes on the scores, I think I have to throw in the baseball score. You know what I mean? um,
Frank Clark gets two safeties, and then who else? Hassan Reddick gets a safety, and Jake Elliott field goal.
yep, that's how it ends. Um,
Just 5
I'm
1 pointers.
I think that my prediction will probably be a little bit more boring than either of your guys's for obvious reasons. But I think it'll be an entertaining game, and I think I could see it starting kind of close. I just think the Eagles kind of run away with it a little bit at the end. I think we'll see some Mahomes magic and stuff, but I think I'd say about 34-20 is about what I'd say. Eagles kind of tack it on closer to the end of the game and kind of ice it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're all in agreements
It's
that
So
so
place your bets on the Chiefs.
we're jinxing it, fellas.
I just I think the Eagles are the class of the NFL right now. They are the team that has stuck out the most in the NFC, while the AFC has had 5 or 6 teams that have just been good, but they beat up on each other. And I just don't think they're at that elite tier level that the Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, the Eagles have what I like to say is a Madden roster where you just trade a bunch of shit to get the best players.
Howie Roseman effect.
We Roseman, the
They
go.
are what the Broncos want them to be. Trade all your picks, get these big acquisitions in Russell Wilson and Sean Payton now. That and even then, the Eagles are in the Super Bowl and still hold a top 10 pick next year or this year.
Yep,
I forgot about that.
that's the Howie effect.
And it's so weird
Big stuff.
because 2 years ago you guys were wanting this dude out of the building.
Yeah, no. Well, when
Dude
you're
saved his job.
yeah, he definitely missed on a few draft picks here and there. The whole Jalen Rager situation. Um, but yeah, his I'd say his drafting is not his strong point. His strong point is just being a general manager. You know what I'm saying? Like he can get he like we lost one game and we got destroyed in the run game. They kept the Commanders kept just running it down our throats. And he went out the next day and got Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. So he is definitely all in on this team, and I'm glad he turned it around.
I forgot that off topic, but I forgot that first game was against the Commanders that you guys lost.
Yeah,
Something about Washington and
Undefeated.
undefeated teams late in the season.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I remember that building up, and I'm like, Gavin, it's gonna happen. Take it from somebody who watched their team have an undefeated season taken away by the Commanders.
and it's prime time too.
Yep, Monday night, same thing that happened to the Steelers.
Yeah,
It's just something about
Yep.
that team.
well, I'm glad we lost because now we got Sue and Joseph.
You're suing Joseph.
Yep, I'm suing him.
Breaking news: Gavin suing Joseph. Joseph, I probably know you probably don't listen to this, but you're being sued.
No.
You're gonna get a summons paper in the mail shortly. Um, I do want to stop on one more topic before we end this. I was about the AFC Championship game that I kind of forgot about, but I want to bring this back up to you, Offenbacker. There was a clip after the game of Jermaine Pratt just yelling about why touch the quarterback that late. This is my last bleeping year, and it really gives off the vibes that I think he has done in Cincinnati, which sucks for you guys because I think he's a good linebacker. I just want to get your thoughts about that and where you stand on that situation.
um, I think sorry, I got a dog right in front of me. Hi, Reggie. Um, I think Pratt was a huge player. He's been a huge player for this team for the last few years. Um, up into his time of development, I remember following some folks uh, on Instagram, Twitter that were saying Jermaine Pratt is going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud. And over time, he really blossomed. And, it's been just fun to watch him do well. I like him on this team. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but he was the one that caught the interception in the end zone off Derek Carr in the wild card game that ended the playoff drought.
Yep.
Um, so, he's an integral player in that Bengals defense. And it's tough because he is one of the free agents that we got to get figured out this year. Him, obviously, Bates, and I think Bates is gone. I've said that for since last season when we didn't get a deal done. Von Bell, some other guys. But, you know, it's it's tough because I think he's a guy that, like, talent wise, I really like for this team, and generally character wise, I think he's been good. I think he just had a meltdown moment, and he has gone back and apologized for it. The day after, there was a video that he did with the press, and there he apologized for what happened with that and said that something he shouldn't have done, and he was sorry for it. Um, it just is really tough for Osai because he's a really young player, and he's had some really good games, and up until that last play, he was playing lights out against Kansas City. He just made a really bad mistake. And unfortunately, those things happen. Um, I don't know if it's just me or what, but I don't have too much of a strong stance on the situation with Pratt. Partially, I think just because I could see him being a bit of a cap casualty anyway, because I think he is going to get paid immensely, and I think he deserves it. I don't know if it's with this team or not, because I think we also need to get something figured out with Logan Wilson. And, those two are, I think a lot of folks have been in agreement that you have to keep at least one of Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. Don't know if you can manage to do both. Excuse me. But either way you slice it, we've got contract negotiations starting this offseason for some dude named Joe anyway. So we've got some decisions to make regardless. So I don't know if he is or isn't going to be on this team next year. If he isn't, I understand. If he is, cool. I think it was just a heat of the moment thing. Unfortunately, it's a bad look. But if he was kind of showing his true colors and saying that it's his last year and he kind of mentally thinks he's out of Cincinnati, then I trust the front office to find someone that maybe doesn't quite replace him, but can at least fill in his role. So that's all I got on that.
And there's plenty of talent in the draft at linebacker position. Guys like Trenton Simpson that can really replace him. Not replace, but fill in that role. Which leads me to Gavin. Is there anything you wanted to add before I do any closing statements?
Go Birds.
Offenbacher.
Just shout out to Travis and Jason Kelsey, both going in the Hall of Fame, and first brothers to face off in the Super Bowl as players, and they are Bearcats. They will be the first Bearcats to go. Go Cats.
And before we end this, I do want to add a couple of remarks. We didn't touch too much on the draft in this podcast because, like I said, they are really big into the Super Bowl with their teams just with Offenbacher's freshly eliminated and Gavin's going to the Super Bowl. They're not really going to be keeping it up like me as a Steelers fan who started watching the day after they got eliminated from in the regular season. The Senior Bowl is this weekend. Guys, I want to announce to check out that could be some early sleepers that have been really coming out in practices these past few weeks. Guys like running back Tajay Spears out of Tulane, the offensive tackle from Ohio State, DeJuan Jones, who is massive. I don't know how we have to do this, but get that man in a Steelers uniform next year. Uh, Offensive lineman at tackle who has been playing somewhat guard and center and tackle this practice leading up to the Senior Bowl. Cody Mock out of North Dakota State. Luke Musgrave's been showing off. Puka Nakua out of, I believe, BYU. And Kai Blue Kelly, the cornerback out of Stanford, who is really moving up my draft board. Obviously, the big guys, such as like Joey Porter and Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez in the cornerback department, are not there at the Senior Bowl. Some of them aren't seniors. Bryce Young, he's not a senior. They're the top prospects. A lot of these top prospects are not showing up to the Senior Bowl, and there's more topics I want to talk about later on in a couple episodes down the road about guys like Will Levis, who is a senior who should have showed up to the draft or to the Senior Bowl to really help his draft stock, but people are telling him he's going to be a first round pick anyways. But it's more information that we've got to talk about later on as after the Senior Bowl passes and the Super Bowl ends. We'll get to more talking about it. But I just want to shout a few guys out, guys like also Rashid Rice, that I wanted to get out there to keep an eye on this weekend. If you do end up watching the Senior Bowl or tune into some practices later on this week, there are a bunch of names that are really showing out. I believe there's one or two more I forget about. I wrote some down in my phone case. Give me a second. It
Oh, you're good.
is Ronnie Bell had he had a really great performance today, the Michigan wide receiver, and Will McDonald. He's another guy that I've really liked so far, and Isaiah Foskey. I really think he's got an opportunity to continue to build that draft stock. But the number one guys I think have really taken the first day was definitely DeJuan Jones. He showed massive and holy. I mean, he showed that he could be a first round talent. And then a guy like Rashad or Tajay Spears, who is probably going to be a day 3 pick, but after today could have elevated himself to a late day 2 pick, early day 3. And I will leave with this, going back to the Jermaine Pratt: in true adversity, your true colors show. So I will leave that quote with the viewers and you guys to remember. And I believe that's it for today's episode. So we'll try to be back either sometime later this week or sometime next week. Something we'll have to discuss. And I hope you enjoyed. We'll try to get webcams working then. And if not, you'll hear another audio podcast. So we will see you guys.
Bye.
Woo, bye.